What's up, everybody? Hope all of you are having an amazing international break because for the first time in a long time, I am actually quite enjoying the international break, and it is at the detriment of two Manchester City players. Yes, my beloved Turkey has beat Croatia 1-0. Yeah, a beautiful goal from Yilmaz, a fantastic performance all around. Kovacic, Gvardiol, two Manchester City players, but fortunately, I don't give a damn because my country is so close. Okay, it's not guaranteed, but so close to going to the Euros. We're almost there. I think a couple of games left. Euro 2028 has been decided. The four member nations of Britain will co-host with Ireland for the 2028 Euros. That is awesome. And an unusual Turkey-Italy plan has been picked for Euro 2032. Oh my goodness. So yeah, overall I'm doing pretty good. Let's talk about Kalvin Phillips. Before we dive into the specifics, let's watch a clip that I saw from the overlap recently with Ian Wright, two legendary players in Ian Wright and Roy Keane, and what they have to say about Kalvin Phillips. So this is what they said.
He doesn't trust him.
It doesn't make sense.
Has he had a chance? He's had a couple of chances. He played a few weeks ago, and people are saying he's not getting him any run-outs.
How do you know he doesn't trust him?
Because he didn't play him. He didn't play him in a big game with all the injuries.
Yeah, but I haven't even seen him playing games.
He played at Newcastle. He played at Newcastle 2 or 3 weeks ago in the cup game.
What did he do wrong?
Well, he didn't do too much good. He didn't do enough Friday. You've got to win the manager's trust over. I'm not saying
he's not playing often enough to try.
But he watches him every day. There's a reason why he's not playing him. He doesn't trust him.
Yeah, but you've got to watch him in games in the situation so as he can get the.
Well, he watched him against Newcastle a few weeks ago. He watched him against Newcastle. He watched him against Newcastle 2 weeks ago. Yeah. 2 weeks on a cup match.
Yeah.
And he obviously went, I don't like what I see.
There's a reason why I personally consider Roy Keane as probably, if not the greatest leader or captain in the history of the Premier League. I mean, yeah, John Stones, Vincent Kompany, but Roy Keane, man, he doesn't fit in this generation, the soft generation where telling the truth and telling people how it is gets you canceled. You know, he's absolutely right. I cannot stress how right he is of what he just said. Pep Guardiola works with him every single day, and he still doesn't trust them. He still does not trust him. He would rather play a Matías Núñez, Kovacic, double pivot. I know everybody likes to use that word, but I see very few people actually understand what a double pivot is. You can't really have a double pivot with two box-to-box central midfielders. And unfortunately for Kalvin Phillips, he's still not quite good enough to be in that role, even though we all know how important a central defensive midfielder really is. You can try with two central defensive box-to-box central midfielders, but if one of them isn't really cut out to be, you know, a ball winner, an interception machine, a guy who can cut passing lanes for days, it's not really going to work in the long run. In the beginning of the game, yes, when everybody has energy, but towards the end of the game, you're going to be found out by the best teams in the Premier League. And unfortunately for him, Kalvin Phillips is a bench player. John Stones had to be turned into a central defensive midfielder. Played an outstanding Champions League final. He played beautifully against Real. John Stones was a world-class central defensive midfielder for the last 3 months of last season. Against Real Madrid, against Bayern München, against Internacional, against all these fantastic teams, he was there, okay? 11 successful dribbles in the Champions League final, if I'm correct about that. That's tied with Messi for the most completed dribbles in a Champions League final. John Stones is a legendary player for Manchester City, in my opinion. He has cemented himself as a legend for Manchester City. I don't know if y'all are going to agree with me on that, but he's definitely on the trajectory. He will 100% be a legend. I think he's a legend right now with everything that he's been doing for the last couple of seasons, especially the last 2 seasons. And Rico Lewis, an academy graduate who we play out of position, is both of these players and 2 box-to-box midfielders are all picked ahead of Kalvin Phillips in big games, in the big moments. What does that tell you? So it says here we've played 8 Premier League games. Kalvin Phillips has played a total of 2 of them. The last game that he actually played, that he actually started, was against Newcastle. Any of you watched that video, I kept a time card, a timesheet of Kalvin Phillips pretty much every time he touched the ball. I highlighted his good moments, I highlighted his bad moments, but at the end of the day, the good moments like this, the amount of bad moments like this, it's an elephant and a mouse, okay? It's a huge discrepancy, and honestly, I feel so bad for saying that. I don't want to make this video because some of you have been getting on me for being quote-unquote too mean, being an asshole to Kalvin Phillips. I get that. I've never in my life been this critical of a player for Manchester City in my life. I honestly don't think I've ever been as critical to any player than I have been to Kalvin Phillips. But I don't know how many times I have to keep saying this. It's nothing personal. I mean, we all know Kalvin Phillips is an amazing person. You could see in the videos, you could see in the interviews with other players. You could, I saw, even in the Inside of the City video where his family came. Okay, he's got a loving family. He's got a beautiful family. He's got an amazing smile. Everybody loves Kalvin Phillips. He is a England international. I'm not going to forget his performances for Leeds. I'm not going to forget his amazing run with England in the Euro 2020, well, 21 final run. He was fantastic for England. Any of you Brits watching this right now, I'm sure you all remember how good Kalvin Phillips was. That's what we thought we were going to get, and that's unfortunately not been the case. Kalvin Phillips earns almost double the amount of money that Julian Alvarez earns. Okay? I understand Kalvin Phillips is a lot older. He's more experienced. I'm not saying what he earns isn't justified. And I'm not saying that he's a bad player. It's nothing personal. But as I've stated on this channel on numerous occasions, nobody is above criticism, okay? This guy is one of my, if not my favorite player for Manchester City. If he doesn't perform well, I will 100% say it on this channel. If he doesn't perform well, I'm not expecting you to be Rodri. I'm not expecting you to be Joshua Kimmich. I'm not expecting you to be Casemiro, Prime Sergio Busquets, or Johan Neeskens. I'm not expecting you to be like Jose Andrade, just these old-time central defensive midfielder and greats. I'm asking you to do your job. Now I see reports that Bayern München are really keen on signing Kalvin Phillips, and I wouldn't blame them. It makes 100% total sense to me. Because it's the international break right now. He's talking with Harry Kane. Okay, he's talking with Harry Kane right now. Okay, they're both buddies. England international. Joshua Kimmich is getting of age. Joshua Kimmich can play multiple positions. There have been some injury doubts in Bayern München. It makes sense. They missed out. They sorely want a central defensive midfielder for depth, especially in the Champions League, because Bayern Munich wants to come back. They want to come back. Okay, I know they just won the Bundesliga. No disrespect. That's not enough. You have to be competing in the Champions League every single season. And for them, they're missing out on Joao Palhinha from Fulham, who I've rated so much on this channel. I think in a short, I said he was the most underrated player in the Premier League last season. I trust my team. I trust my management. I trust everybody on the coaching staff. If you put a player out there on the field, I'm going to support you. I'm going to root for you. But if you keep performing this poorly and you keep getting knocked off the hierarchy of players to be put on a starting lineup, I don't know what you all want me to say. Okay, I don't know what you want me to say. If Kalvin Phillips miraculously stays in January for the rest of the season, I'm still going to want him to succeed, obviously. Hope none of you, say otherwise, because that is complete and utter, BS. I want him to succeed. He's just not succeeding. I want him to do well. He's just not doing well. I want him to play. He's not getting picked. Okay, I don't know more football than Pep Guardiola. None of us do. Anybody can have opinions. Let's just not be sensitive about it. This move to Bayern Munich makes 100% sense to me. One player that I really want, and I'm sure most of you have seen this on Twitter recently, is a player that I know pretty darn well over the last season or two, watching him for Real Sociedad and some of the few games that he played for Spain. That's Martin Zubimendi, 24 years old. I think he has a release clause of around 50 something million pounds. That's literally in our territory. A young, creative midfielder who can play multiple positions. Let's do this. I would love to bring him in. Let's try him out, okay? Kalvin Phillips, I want the best for him. And unfortunately, the best for him right now is to move on, explore your options. Okay, I said this was coming. I said if he didn't perform, he's 100% going to get sold or a loan move at least. And it's looking likely. It's looking like it's going to happen. And honestly, I think it's the best for both parties. Okay, if someone miraculously bids 40 million pounds for Kalvin Phillips, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I am taking that and running as fast as I can in the opposite direction, okay? Like I said, I don't expect you to be a reincarnation of Johan Nieskins, but I'm asking you to be well-versed in how this team operates. Kovacic slotted in perfectly. Matias Nunes looks like he's going to slot in perfectly. There have been so many times where Matias Nunes has impressed me. Matias Nunes has impressed me more in a week than Kalvin Phillips has done in a year and a half. He's just not fitting the system. And yes, I've been very critical of him, and I apologize for all the mean and hateful things that I've said to him. But what I'm not going to apologize for is to say you need to leave, because I think it's the best for your career. So many times in that Newcastle game where he just looked uninterested in tackling Isak and all of Newcastle's forwards. He looked uninterested. The game against Wolves, I'm not sure if it was Wolves, but it was a recent game. Walking when we conceded a goal. Yeah, okay, I'm remembering it now. It was a Wolves game. He also yet again looked completely uninterested in the ball. Looked uninterested in tracking back. Okay, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I really don't know what else to say. I mean, if you being tired, you being gassed is not a good enough excuse. All right, it's not a good enough. It's not a good enough reason. You have to dig deep. You have to show us that you want to be here. You have to show us that you want to defend our goal and defend our titles and defend everything. Okay, because honestly, looking at the schedule, we're out of the Carabao Cup. That takes away at least 5 or 6 potential matches that Kalvin Phillips could potentially play in. Okay, maybe the opening round or so of the FA Cup, the end of this year, beginning of next year, the opening rounds, and the last 2 games of the Champions League group stage. So I'm seeing a total of 5 or 6 possible games that Kalvin Phillips could start in. At the end of the day, it's not personal. I love Kalvin Phillips. He's a great professional. I admire that he wanted to stay in the summer. I admire that so much, that he wanted to stay. But if you're just not a correct fit, then you're just not a correct fit. It's nothing to do with how good of a person he is, how amazing his smile is, how, charming he is. I don't care about that. All right? Because as far as I'm concerned, Jack Grealish was so incredibly pivotal to our treble. Yet I'm seeing so many Manchester City fans on Twitter give Jack Grealish hell. Saying Jack Grealish needs to leave because Doku's better, because Doku's faster. He takes on players. Jack Grealish doesn't. All these BS comments that I'm seeing. Yeah, so in conclusion, I think Kalvin Phillips is going to leave Manchester City Football Club, and I think it's the best for both parties. Let me know what y'all think.